for another exploration of the Holy Scriptures with an Afrocentric take of these scriptures. Today we will be considering chapter 15 and chapter 16. There have been a lot of information that we've shared so far, and I am confident that we will find some other gems in these two chapters. There are two different stories, but very close together, very related, and it seems to me that it is both uh, a key to the understanding of humanity, ourselves, because these writings were there a long time ago. So in chapter 15, what it talks about is a vision that Abraham has after he has rescued his nephew or brother and turned down Abimelech, Melchizedek's offer of gratitude, whereas he has taken some from the Egyptian king. The vision that Abraham has is twofold. One, a very positive one, where the covenant is signed or is bestowed upon Abraham, and that covenant is about God promising, reiterating his promise to make him a great nation. And in this case, he brings him out and asks him to count the stars in the heavens. And by not being able to do so, because there were so many, God tells him that he will be as many as these stars. A very bold and very appealing promise. So as he is conversing with the Lord, uh, Abraham falls, he goes to sleep. And by going to sleep, he has a bad dream or a bad vision. And in this vision, it talks about, and I'll say this, it talks about where the Lord tells him, and he said to Abraham, know for a surety that thou shalt be a stranger in the land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. It was a prophecy that thy seed that was blessed will go into captivity for 400 years. Um, a lot of time, this verse is attributed to people of African descent. The fact that we have gone out of our land, or I'll say some of our ancestors went out of the land, and it has been 400 years or more than 400 years that a lot of black people or were sent into captivity. And in this, there is a reason to believe that we are coming out of that period of subjugation by other nations. And it is, you can see there is a collective consciousness that is emerging. And when people of African descent are trying to find these clues, although our history has been erased, we are able to find glimpses of this history. And these scriptures are one of those glimpses that, gives us an idea of who we were and what was our place as these events were playing out. Now, is it the black nation into captivity? Is it the um, Abrahamic descendants that go into captivity? How does that play out? Because um, you can, we know now, for example, that like the Arab nation makes up for 6% of the world population, but they make up for 1% of the world's refugee, the world refugees. So that's a lot, right? It means that they are out of their land, and they are among the descendants of Abraham. Is it them? Is it the Israelite, where Israel was in captivity, not only in Europe and other parts of the world, but initially in Israel? And were there slaves or captives in Israel for that long, for 400 years? Maybe this is something to explore and count the days and say, okay, when were they? When was the were um, uh, the the Israelites considered to be um, slaves in Egypt, and that, see if that amounted to 400 years. We can go back as when Joseph was sold to um, by his brothers, and to the time when they left Egypt through Moses. Is that 400 years? I don't know. I haven't looked into that so far. It could be. Or it could be just something else, because this could be applied to many people, many nations that have been subjugated by other nations. But here there is a statement right on 14 that it says, "The nation that has subjugated you, I will judge it." Although God is the one that is foreseeing this or possibly allowing this to happen, the nation that has afflicted um, the descendant of Abraham were to be judged by God or the Lord. Now, does that mean that if we consider that Egypt during this time and the time at the time of Joseph was African, Kemet was not called Egypt. Egypt is a Greek name, but the the real name was Kemet, Kemet, which is black. Now, the our ancestors, if they were African, they were black. Does it mean that what happened afterwards was um, a consequence of them treating the Israelites that way and being judged by themselves being taken into captivity in other lands? That is something to um, that is possibly there. I'm not saying that it is there, but it is possibly something that is there. Wow. Now, when it was really dark, then there was a light that came through the altar that Abraham had put together for a sacrifice of animals. And that's another thing that I kind of don't understand much. But it seems like these deities have um, they have a weakness for burnt animals, sacrifice of that. It could be why animals, because of the blood, because of the conscience, or is it symbolic of something else? I believe that it is saying something about the nature of those deities and the thirst either for, I'll say, is it blood or it's the smoke that seems to be having an aroma that is pleasing throughout. And at this point, Abraham is not putting the fire on the sacrifice, but there is a light that came through and burnt the pieces of meat that were laid down, because Abraham was there chasing away the the birds that would come eat from the food he was putting together for God. And that light came, burnt it. Was it a light coming from, um, was it a star? Was it something else? It just came and then burnt it and the sacrifice. And it says, there the covenant was then made with Abraham. The same day the Lord made the covenant with Abraham, saying, unto thy seed I'll be given the land from the river of Egypt. Egypt keeps coming into the great river of the river Euphrates. There is something that I came across, and it talks about, I don't know if it is about the 6 Day War between Israel and the other nations in that was Egypt, Jordan, Syria. Uh, yeah, I think that was it. Iraq as well. And in 6 days, tiny little bit Israel took out all those great nations, rounded the plains, and it was over. And that made them the de facto power of the Middle East at that point, because then, you know, uh, Egypt had fallen in 6 days, and Gabal Abdel Nasser, who was the president at that time, I don't know if they called him president or prime minister, something like that. He resigned from, it was from June 5th to June 10th, 1967. Not that I'm good at, history, but that was it. Now, when Israel took um, out those nations, they went up to the Nile River, right? Is it the Nile River or the river that was in the east? Really, for sure, there was a river that was part of Egypt that was taken, and Israel stayed on the other side. And then, in exchange of peace, they gave out those annexed territories, and it was all over again. But this is, I believe, the cornerstone of and the foundation to the claim that this land has been uh, for uh, the Israelites, because it goes way back then, and it was given to them by God. And what that happened, when that happens in 67, they've given back that land at their on accord, but it wouldn't have been sustainable to keep that much land with a small population. With a small population, because we're just not that many. So that's the covenant, that's the vision. And I think this chapter on its own has left us with more questions than answers. And but at the same time laying the foundation of what it will be. What are the constant cycle of Israel's life or any nation's life? And it is this cycle of prosperity and where you are many, and then a cycle of when there is willful blindness, or just because nobody knows what it is. Um, there is this cycle where you are taken into captivity, and then it goes back and forth as a cycle. That is the story, and these cycles can take a long time. You may be going through some tough time, and they've taken a long time. And that 400 years of subjugation by other nations was really something that describe nations, even individual, because we all go through stuff, and staying true to your purpose is the key to getting out of that cycle and staying out of the misery for longer period of time. There are for sure other wisdoms in terms of the sacrifice that Abraham has made. And one of the things that he did is that he stayed out day, all day, making this work for a sacrifice. And in the evening, he stayed out trying to get the birds out of the carcasses. And in the end, when the night was there, Abraham had that covenant sealed with God. And it could also be a way of looking at hard work during the day, and really pushing it, even when we are getting um, sleepy, we continue to work. And probably when we have some rest and we sleep, we will have a nightmare of a future that is not so friendly as what we are living at that time, or the work that, you know, getting the fruit, reaping the benefit of our hard work. So those things are there, but they are really psychological. And you can apply them whether it is in an Afrocentric um, perspective, or just a secular way of being, or I would say an individual perspective of, of living. And that is definitely true, that hard work pays. With a little bit of blessing and hard work, you can have the whole world. You can have generations upon generations fill the earth. And I think this chapter is really um, a true statement to that mode of being that will always pay. That does not necessarily mean going to war, but it pays off to work hard and to stay at it and be consistent with it, even when it's not popular. Anyway, we are now into chapter 16. Chapter 16, here there is a switch from Abraham. Abraham does not have kids, and his wife, Sarai, realized that this is not something that she can live with. She wants him to have kids, and she comes up with a deal that one will say it's a sweet deal. And the deal is that because I'm not giving you kids, here, take my servant Hagar and um, sleep with her and have kids with her, so that I can have children in my house. Of course, it's a deal Abraham could not resist or try to resist, as we can all imagine. Being offered something as such from your woman, and you turn it down. Who are you to do that? So he accepted, and lo and behold, Hagar gave birth, to Ishmael. And some regard Ishmael as the forefather of the Arab nations. I don't believe that is the case, because what happens is that Hagar was a servant that came out of Egypt, was the servant from Egypt. She was African, and she gave birth to the first son, Ishmael, to Abraham. The last time we were talking about why it is difficult for the establishment, or the spiritual establishment of now, to accept that, or even, some scientific circles to accept that Africa at this time was black, because it also means that the first money that benefited the Abrahamic descendant was from Africa. The first army that protected the Abrahamic descendants was mostly African. The first child that is born for the Abrahamic descendants is African. I will go back to Sarai's proposition to get the kids. And once I was driving in a cab, and these two girls asked why God had allowed those kind of things for the man to take another woman and things of that nature. And I may not be well understood on this, but if you put the purpose that Abraham has, it is a purpose that is bigger than him. It is not about him. And with Sarai, who is the wife, she understands that as well. And she knows that the only way the purpose would be accomplished is if she is able to protect it, to nurture it, to make sure that it comes to life and prospers. It is like a child, but she cannot do that on her own because she's not fertile. And of course, she is Abraham's sister, by the way. Um, it's it's very clear that she allowed something that would be a grievance to her under normal circumstances to happen because of the purpose. That is how far a female or a wife is supposed to go when the purpose is clear for the man they have chosen to bless with the chance to propagate themselves into the future and live forever through child rearing. And here, Sarai gives an example of how far that can go. And it will be a mistake to overlook that and to concentrate on the shortcoming or the weaknesses of Abraham for not sticking with one woman, but seeing how the feminine protection of a purpose is beyond those considerations of feelings or temporary hurt, right? The other thing that is interesting is the fact that she's African. But not only is she African, when she gives birth, she, her mistress was despised in her eyes. She had contempt. She felt like she was, she was the goat because she was able to give Abraham a son. Now, Sarai deals with her in a way that is not described, but she deals with her so much. It's not saying that she was beating her or anything. She ran away. A pregnant woman runs away because, okay, Abraham says, she's your servant. You do what you have to do. And she got rid of her. But as she was running away like that, she went into the bush or some places. An angel comes to see her. And the angel said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Oh, my mistress." And then she said, the angel tells her, she tells her version of the story. And the angel says, "Go back to her and submit yourself." This is deep. This is deep in the sense that the notion that a more fertile or more procreative female would bow down to the sterile one is a very delicate dance to imagine. And you can break it down to many levels, even go to, this is where you see um, like the Afrocentric way of looking at it. It's like describing our state of things. We are the continent that has the natural and human resources that are very creative in nature. But we are, and everything that we have in terms of production or creativity, it belongs to other races, other companies, other nations. There is no one single discovery made by a black or person of African descent that is claimed by African institutions or African nations, and that is patented and able to sell, and beside the cultural, non-significant toys that people sell online or otherwise. It seems to me that this is what has been asked from this African woman, to go back and subdue herself. And she does that. But before she does that, she is blessed. And here is another thing that is very particular, because all throughout she is blessed by the angel, an angel that has the right. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, I will multiply thy seed exceedingly, that is, that it shall not be numbered for multitude. This is a key verse. This black woman, and you can, there is something they call the Eve gene. The Eve gene, it seems like this is where it is created, because the black woman is able to produce the largest variation of genetic material in terms of individual. And that's why in Africa you get to the point where she can produce the extremes of almost every major achievement within her proximal genetic material. It means that in Africa you find more variations of genetic material, to the point that it doesn't matter what the world is doing outside of Africa, you will have the extreme of those characteristics played out in the same place. So you see, like in Africa, you will find some of the tallest people on earth, and then you'll find the shortest people. In Africa, you'll find the smartest people, and then you find the dumbest people. You find the darkest people, and you find the whitest people. The black woman is the only woman that is capable of procreating every other race within herself and remain. So I will put it in that other way. Every other race on earth has at its base a production from the black woman. So what you will see in every race, there is there is a version, there is an Africa that manifests itself. Whether you go in India, you will see darker people and darker like us. There are Asians that are dark, you know. In Europe, you have the albinos. They're white. Actually, beside white people, there is no other nation that I know, other race that I know that can produce white people beside the black woman. And this very blessing is suggestive of that, of the fact that, you know, Ishmael or this woman was able to be blessed like that, and being able to produce so much, and everybody else. There is a well established narrative to the fact that, you know, um, the black woman is really is the key to it all. And what if, I'll say this, what if she is so valuable that whoever has her working with or for them will have everything? And I thought of a phenomenon that happens in North America or everywhere. It's the fact that, you know, probably it's only the black woman that does not belong to the black man. And that did not happen recently. It used to be different. But now, if you look at every other nation, like the Chinese women, they know they belong to Chinese men. They're not belonging like subjects, or like Sarai had Hagar, but knowing that the purpose they will be protecting is through the spirit of that man. We are the only one who do not have. It seems like entertainment has replaced, or something else has replaced it. And if you trace who owns that thing, that entity that owns the black woman, you can have a glimpse of who really is responsible for the affliction of uh, the African continent, or people of African descent. And finding that is very necessary, very crucial to applying the right solutions to the ailments that really plague our species or our race. Because that thing they belong to knows that it cannot own them completely. But as long as they do not collectively work towards Africa, then you can submit to Africa. And it's interesting because that in itself is a very interesting and take to have. The other thing that was interesting here in the exchange with the angel, this angel, we said there was a notion of polytheism, or multiple gods, and this one is acting as if he is God himself, because he took it upon himself to bless that African woman without consulting the Lord. Was it a mistake? Was it a what was it? Nobody knows, but it seems to reinforce the notion that decision making amongst the gods at that time was not strictly hierarchical, and the power shifted, but it was there. And this is the first time, after we've been talking about the patriarchs, that a divine entity interacts with a human woman beside bearing children for them when they created the Nephilims, but interacted in terms of blessing a woman to make that woman a nation. So the promise to make Israel a nation was made to a man, to Abraham, and as you go down the descendant. The promise to make Africa a nation, a great nation, was made through the woman. And if we understand those differences, not even if we understand, far, far back, the woman has always been center of the African development. These things about that have changed, have been switched, came from the other nations. But what Africa had perfected was the, I'll say, I will not go as far as say the worship of the feminine. It is really remarkable because at the end of the day, it matches really also with non-scientific knowledge. Because, you know, this is what is true. We are all born women, female. It doesn't matter. When the embryo is formed and then it starts developing, the differentiation happens a few weeks later, where the sexual organs start to develop and change, the clitoris, the penis, and the ovaries, the testicles. All that happens after all, but we all have this door baseline framework of being female at first. And you can argue also the fact that the female was made from a rib from a man, but it seems to contradict what we've has been, the center of religion for very long. So this thing, even, it makes sense. It makes so much sense that maybe for myself only, but that's why I keep these records. It's very interesting to see the fact that the first creation was a man, but then everybody has this baseline of feminine, and then evolve into a man or a woman, and something else based on environmental and other considerations. But I'm glad I got that. So I went 10 minutes past, 9 minutes past the time, the 30 minutes mark. It was a lot, and I'm happy with this exploration. So I'm excited about chapter 17 and 18. And with that, I'll leave you. I don't think it's necessary to talk about the event we have next week, but tune in.